Well, today I'd like to talk about what's the difference between a disciple and a Christian. And before I get into that, make sure that you take time, check out the discussion guide that we provided for you. It goes along with this video. You can find it linked in the description below. Well, as Eric kicked off a new message series for us called Vital Signs, he introduced us to the challenge of looking at what are the important metrics that indicate how we are actually doing as a dedicated follower of Jesus Christ, or how are we as Jesus' disciples. He shared 7 common barriers to a pure discipleship relationship, including, I don't know how, I'm so inadequate, I don't have the time, and it's just too late for me. Maybe one of those or more of those might resonate with you, but for this video, I'd like to take time to explore the difference between a Christian and a disciple. See, there are more than 2 billion people in the world who claim to be Christians, but sadly not everyone has achieved the full expectations of what Jesus sets for his followers. Some people simply consider themselves Christians since they were born and raised in Christian families, or perhaps they recited the sinner's prayer at some point in their lives. Some claim to be Christians as they have performed certain religious activities, like they took their first communion, they were baptized maybe as an infant, they've gone through some sort of spiritual formation class, or they simply just go to church. But what exactly is meant when we use the word disciple? Well, by definition, disciple means a learner or a follower of a master teacher. A disciple should be a follower willing to accept and assist in spreading the doctrines or the teachings of their master. So if a Christian by definition is to be like Christ, the expectation then is for us to be a full-on student of Jesus Christ, studying, learning, and then doing. And why is this distinction so important? Well, if as a student we are to use the literature, the Bible, to help us learn, we won't find Jesus instructing his followers to go and make Christians. Rather, in Matthew 28:19, we see Jesus give an instruction commonly referred to as the Great Commission, which he says this: "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations." Final instructions from the Lord was for us as his disciples to replicate, to multiply by telling others about Jesus and then inviting them into becoming a full-on student or disciple of Jesus. To help us better understand, I want to share with you 5 different steps to becoming a disciple. And I want to look at a passage from Matthew 16, 24 through 28 to help us better understand, because if you're going to become a student of Jesus and asked to be his disciple, you need to come to him on his terms. So let's read this passage that says this: "Then Jesus told his disciples, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming to his kingdom.'" The first step is desire. In verse 24, Jesus said, "If any of you wants to be my follower," he didn't say if any of you are coerced or convinced to be my follower. Somebody needs to want to decide if they want to follow Christ. Which begs the question, what exactly does it mean to follow? Well, follow means to walk the same road. We have to be willing to come to his terms, and the rest of the passage lays out what his terms are. To follow Jesus as his disciples requires a free will choice from us to accept his terms to be a disciple. Not about someone else forcing you to, for some reason, to be a Jesus follower. Next, we see the step of denial. In the second half of verse 24, we see Jesus say, "You must give up your own way." Other translations, Jesus says, "You must deny yourself." That word deny means to disown. Let him repudiate himself. Let him separate himself. Let him refuse any association or companionship with himself. And how do you do that? Well, first of all, Jesus isn't saying deny yourself of specific things. It's not an expectation to no longer eat certain meals or deny yourself of that well-deserved vacation you've been saving up for. What he's saying is to deny your flesh, your fleshly desires, your selfishness, things like self-fulfillment, self-indulgence, self-sufficiency, our ability to put ourselves and our desires first. In other words, when you commit to following Christ, you're giving up your right to run your life. You surrender yourself not to your will, but to God's. It's giving up your independence, which in our country seems blasphemous as we continually celebrate and fight for our freedom and independence. That may work here in our country, but don't dare try to do that in the heavenly kingdom. The next step to discipleship that we can see here is the step of death. Verse 25, Jesus continues by saying, if you want to follow me, you need to deny yourself and be willing to die. But if you try to keep your life, you will lose it. However, if you are willing to give up your life, it will be saved. Meaning if you demonstrate your self-denial by giving up the life that you were living and to take on this new life that Jesus offers, your life will be saved. If as a follower we are to walk the road that Jesus walked, we need to understand that the very reason Jesus came to this world was to die for us. And if we're willing to give up ourselves for his death, well, then his death becomes our death. And Christianity without a cross is not Christianity. And Jesus tells us in verse 24, we need to be willing to take up our own cross and to follow him. In other words, I'm ending my life of self and starting a new life of sacrifice and service. This might mean you may have to give up a personal ambition or a goal or a place to live or possession or a relationship or maybe even a career. The fourth step that we can see is a step of devotion. Again, at the end of verse 24, Jesus is demonstrating the level of commitment through his word choice here when he says, and follow me. Again, to walk means to walk the same road. And in ancient times, discipleship was much like an internship. As you watch the master, you start becoming like the master. We want to be Christ-like. That means all the church we attend, all the Bible study we engage in, all the serving we do, the generosity we engage in, the community group involvement that we engage in, all of that has a goal, and the goal is to be a better disciple. It's to help all of us to better conform to the truths that we spend so much time learning and studying and discussing. Discipleship needs to be looked at as being willing to inviting Jesus into being a part of everyday life, everyday activity. You don't leave him at church when you attend once a week. You keep him with you everywhere you go. Take him with you on vacation. You don't try to keep hidden certain areas and activities of your life from him. The final step of discipleship I want to give you is destiny. Verse 27, we see Jesus give the culmination of if you succeed in the four previous steps specifically, if you deny yourself, if you win the battle of giving up on trying to do it all for you, there will be a reward that is promised. This battle is a decision that will have lifelong consequences and eternal implications. If you're willing to lose all of yourself, you will discover that you will gain everything. Verse 27 promises that one day God will judge every life, either rewarding it or rebuking it. My hope for you is that through this Vital Signs series, you'll not only better understand what the indications are of the health as a disciple, but that you will better evaluate your own devotion to travel that same road that Jesus traveled, hopefully recognizing the rewards that he has for you should you choose to do so. So take time to discuss the guide, have discourse about these topics covered. Make sure you remember to take time to pray together as a group and then to share your own prayer needs as to how your group members can be praying for you this week.